Hey guys, it's me, Max is Fun. In this video, I will be going over some of the command blocks for my ULTRAKILL in Minecraft project. If you haven't seen the actual videos, go do that. Go watch the content and they actually put effort in. Also, the map download is out. You can find it in the description or the pinned comment. Go play it. Credit me if you use it in a video. And if you really want to figure out how it all works, you can try going through the spaghetti maze of commands. Good luck. Even I get lost in this place. And I made it! Also, I just want to mention, on the previous video, one guy commented yes 3 times. Then another guy commented, I agree with the guy who commented yes 3 times. Then another completely different guy commented yes 3 times. I think this is absolutely hilarious. Please turn this into a bit. Everyone, go comment yes 3 times right now. This is so funny. It also gives me a ton of algorithm boosting. Anyways, I would normally say cue the intro, but this video doesn't have one. I also got some of you guys, the fans, the people, to suggest things I should cover in this video. And, have you guys just ask questions, not really related to the commands. So, I guess this is a Q&A now. Let's just start, shall we? In no particular order, the first comment is by @MadnessDystopia_official. How the fluff did you make all of that? In brackets, ULTRAKILL in Minecraft Bedrock. Text arrow. Yes! That! So, I think they want me to explain the entire thing. No. Do you understand the sheer scale of this project? I don't want this video to be an hour long. Next comment. @Ropsidor2. I probably mispronounced that. They commented on the community post and the pinned comment asking me to do a Q&A. This is a Q&A. They also asked if I would say this is harder or easier than normal ULTRAKILL. I would say about the same difficulty. I obviously tried to make them as close as possible, but some rooms are definitely a little harder, mainly because Minecraft has knockback and ULTRAKILL doesn't. And some rooms are easier because multi-parries. @CenturyGaming-Level1 asks, are we going to see a violence update? Or are you going to wait until Act 3 is done? Haha, I am not doing Act 3, for a couple reasons. One, like they said, I would rather wait until Act 3 is done in the actual game, which will probably take a year or two. And I am also very done with this project. I would say I would come back, but every other project I said that to have been forgotten in the dust. Next comment. I'm not pronouncing that. Asks why no 3D models for items? They too hard? Well, the main reason is I don't even know if you can do 3D models in Bedrock without mods. And if you can, I'm not a 3D artist, so I would either have to spend hours figuring out how to do it myself, pay someone else to do it, or steal, and I'm not okay with any of those. While we're on the topic of the texture pack, some people asked why I didn't do textures for the enemies. And I thought about it, but I didn't do it because I'm really not the best texture artist, and there are a lot of enemies. Also, I don't think there's enough humanoid-shaped mobs in Minecraft for that. Okay, finally on to the questions about the commands now. From this point onward, I'm just going to be yapping about nerd stuff. So, if you don't want to see that, then why did you click on this video? @EvergreenIvy asks, how did you make the guns, well, shoot when you click? Great question, and you know what, I'm just going to explain how guns work, period, because I'm going to explain coins later, and I feel like knowing how the bullets actually work would be quite useful. Every single gun in the game is actually just a retextured bundle. And when you right-click a bundle, it drops everything inside. So then I retextured horse armor to be invisible, put that inside the bundle, and then detect whenever a horse armor entity exists. If it does, run a script of commands. For me, I change the scoreboard value to 1. Technically, you could skip right to the shoot part here, but because I want multiple different guns, a scoreboard is much simpler. After that, kill the entity, replace the player's main hand with air, and immediately refill it with a new gun. How it knows which gun is actually just a weapon swapping system, which is entirely different, and I'm not going into it right now. Okay, on to the actual shooting part. From this point on, it is unique for every gun in the game, but they follow the same general pattern. If the scoreboard value of right click is 1, then check what item the player is holding and give it a tag corresponding to the item held. For any player that has said tag, summon a boat 50 blocks above them and 1.5 blocks in front of them with the same rotation as them. Then tag the boat so we know what type of bullet it is. Then play a sound, sometimes even shake the camera a bit. Then, if the boat exists, remove the tag and set the scoreboard back to 0. That was a lot of commands, and that all happens in a 20th of a second. Now, you may be wondering, why did we summon a boat 50 blocks above the player? Well, that boat is actually the bullet. If you look up during gameplay, you can see all of the boats flying around. I would make them invisible, but boats can't have effects. Obviously every bullet is different, but the general way they work is teleport the boat forward a block, sometimes half a block, if I want a slower projectile. Then 50 blocks below the boat, check for collision with a block. If there is, then kill the boat. If the boat is still alive, run a set of commands, normally a damage command and a particle command, and then copy those commands for faster moving bullets. Here's a chart on all the bullet speeds in the game. Oh, and sentry bullets. 10 blocks a tick. That's 200 blocks a second. Good luck dodging that. Alright, alt fires. They work by just using some simple sneak detection that gives the player a tag. From this point on, every alt fire is different. Some shoot a projectile, some charge a projectile, some do both. But I'm gonna go over coins. You know, the most complicated one. It starts off pretty similar to bullets. You know, boat. But it also summons a chicken with a name of coin 1 to 4, depending on the coin count scoreboard. If there are more than 4 coins in existence, then you can't throw any more. After that, it adds a coin tag to the chicken, then plays a sound, and adds a new tag to the player, which gets removed when you unsneak. That's just there so you have to unsneak to fire another coin. Onto the coin projectile. First it teleports forward half a block, but then it teleports up 0.3 blocks directly on the y-axis. This gives the coin a slight upwards angle which gets smaller the more upward you look. After that, it checks for collision, then teleports the chicken and plays a particle. This is then repeated about 9 times in the span of 3 ticks, after of which the boat dies, which leaves the chicken alone. The reason I use the chicken is because their slower falling makes it easier to shoot the coin. Wait, that's not a chicken. That's because any chicken that has the tag coin 0 is given invisibility, constantly plays a particle, pegged to take no damage, and will constantly face towards the nearest enemy. If there is another coin, then face towards that. Okay, that's all of the coin projectile code. Now what happens when a bullet hits the coin? Haha, that's the most complicated part. Because not every bullet can hit coins, for the ones that can, they have to have a massive chunk of commands just for when they hit a coin. Let's go over them, shall we? First is the damage, which just adds 4 depending on how many hit coin tags the bullet has. Then when the bullet hits the coin, it teleports 50 blocks down and faces towards the nearest enemy, then teleports 1 block forward and 1 block up. The reason I do that is because the bullet faces towards the enemy's feet, which means it will most likely hit the floor before the enemy, and by moving it 1 block up, it will instead be aimed at the enemy's chest, making it much more likely to hit. If that command activated, then play a sound, and shake the camera a little. Then the bullet gets 1 of the hit coin tags depending on how many it already has, then adds a tag to the coin to remember that coin has been hit. Teleport the boat 50 blocks back up. Then the bullet checks 50 blocks below and faces towards the nearest coin that doesn't have the hit coin tag. If there is nothing, then this command won't run. If it does run, then teleport the boat 50 blocks back up. Okay, got a little sidetracked explaining the guns. However, there is one more question left. At Nicolomadia5314 asks, would it be cool if you show us how you made the enemy, and the boss. Okay, gonna rephrase that a little bit. How about a enemy and a boss? For the enemy, I'm going to explain the virtue, because I can. I'm gonna start with the virtue beam projectile? Is that a projectile? Sure, I don't know. Fun fact, I actually coded the virtue beam for the flesh prison first, because I made P-1 before I even started working on greed. Okay, on to the commands. First, anything that has the V-beam tag will summon an armor stand named V-beam 30 blocks above the nearest player. Then, if the entity with the V-beam tag is enraged, give the armor stand an enraged tag. Then add another tag to the entity with the V-beam tag. This is to track which entity damaged the player. And then remove the V-beam tag. Then for the armor stand, give it invisibility. Then if it's enraged and doesn't have the V-beam 0 tag, then follow the nearest player. Then spin the armor stand. This is done to create that spinning cross circle on the ground. Then if they have the V-beam 0 tag, spin at twice the speed. What is the V-beam 0 tag? Well, a virtue beam has 3 stages, each lasting for 15 ticks or 3/4 of a second. The first stage is just regular spinning, and if enraged, follow the player. At the second stage, the V-beam will spin at twice the speed, and if enraged, stop following the player. At the third stage, the V-beam will activate, adding a lot more particles and a damaging hitbox. And after that stage, it dies. If you're wondering what the rest of the commands are, that's just particles. Okay, on to the actual virtue enemy now. The virtue is just a Vex with a play animation command constantly making its head big. Fun fact about this, it actually makes the hitbox of the virtue a little inconsistent because you have to shoot the small body, not the huge head. The Vex is also always teleporting to itself, which makes it not able to move. However, every 3 seconds the virtue rolls a random number between 1 and 2, which will then make it teleport 1 block to either side. The virtue behavior activates every 6 seconds, which first, if there are less than 2 virtues and if there isn't any blessed virtues, adds 1 to a scoreboard. Then, if that scoreboard reaches 5, the virtue will enrage. There's also an Easter egg if it reaches 100. So if you really want to dodge virtue beams for 10 minutes, then you can see an Easter egg that is not worth it. Do not waste your time doing this, please. After that, it checks how many virtues there are and gives a tag Vi 1 through 3 for each virtue. There are never more than 3 virtues at once in the game, so there's no need for more tags. The way I check how many virtues is actually done using redstone and a test4 command. Because for some reason, the dedicated count function will still give true if there are less or more than the number specified. So instead, I have to check how many with redstone. Annoyed expression. After that, it adds the V-beam tag to each virtue every 2 seconds. So, if there are 3 virtues, it will be a constant bombardment of virtue beams. Also, fun fact, literally the only room with 3 virtues in the entire game is the final room in P2. So I coded an entire function for 1 room. I didn't notice until after I made the virtues. For the boss, I chose the Leviathan, because pain. Now how did I animate a giant block-built eldritch abomination of the sea? Well, I just used structure blocks. It's not really that complicated, honestly. The hardest part was just having to build all the animation frames. That alone took me like 3 days. In the center of the Leviathan, there is an invisible armor stand that constantly faces towards the player. And then depending on the rotation and tags of the armor stand, it will load the corresponding structure, allowing the Leviathan to look like it's always facing towards the player. Onto the attacks. After the Leviathan's intro finishes, which is just a bunch of animation commands, I mean what else would it be, it places a redstone block under a section of commands for the behavior. After 3 seconds, these commands activate. If the Leviathan has not done any attacks, then run a random number between 1 and 2. If 1, place a redstone block below the projectile attack. If 2, place a redstone block below the punch attack. If they already did the projectile attack, then do the punch attack, and vice versa. If they've already done both attacks, or have entered phase 2, then run the dive commands. For the projectile attack, it plays an animation, then adds a tag to the armor stand in the middle of the Leviathan. That tag will summon all the projectiles a couple blocks in front of the armor stand. There is a slight problem doing it this way, where if you are above the Leviathan, or below, the projectiles won't spawn in the mouth, which looks a little weird, I guess, but I'm too lazy to think of a way to fix it. After 5 seconds of shooting projectiles, play an animation, and then remove the redstone block below, place a new one under the behavior code, and add a tag to the Leviathan. On to the punch attack. Actually, is this a punch? I don't know, the code is based on King Minos' punches, so close enough. After playing the animation, when the orange particle plays, it will also check if the player is in one of 3 areas, and set a scoreboard depending on which one. If the player is not in any of these areas, then the default score is 1, which is the right side punch. Half a second after that, activate the corresponding punch depending on the scoreboard. Each of these is the exact same except for the animation played and the area it damages. It first plays an animation, then slightly after it plays the second frame, it checks the area for any feedback or armor stands, which are obviously summoned when you punch with its feedbacker. If there is any, then add a tag to the Leviathan, then play a sound, heal the player, and damage the Leviathan. If the Leviathan didn't get parried, then damage any player in that radius and play a sound, then finish with an animation. If the Leviathan did get parried, then split off into a different animation, then do the same ending commands as the projectile attack. For the dive, it's just animations. But when it finishes, it actually decides to either do the tail attack or enter phase 2. Because the Leviathan never dives in phase 2, I can just check after it dived if it has a phase 2 tag or not. If it does, then we know to run the start phase 2 code. If it doesn't, then run the tail code. The tail attack first checks the rotation of the armor stand in the middle, but with 4 possibilities instead of 8. Depending on the outcome, run the corresponding tail sweep. For the actual tail, it's literally just a bunch of animation commands. But where's the damage? Well, it's actually built into the animation structures. Some of them have invisible armor stands inside of the tail, and whenever these armor stands load, they damage any nearby players, and then die. This does mean there are some blind spots, but they are very small, and trying to align yourself right in the middle of the battle might be hard. After, it just plays the same rising animation but in reverse, and then activates the rising code for the Leviathan, which will get rid of all of its attack tags and restarts the cycle. When the Leviathan reaches half health, it enters phase 2. Now you may think I can just check the health value of the Leviathan, but no, you can only do that in Java, meaning I instead have the health of the Leviathan, and whenever it dies with the phase 1 tag, it just resummons itself with the phase 2 tag and all its health restored. And we already went over what happens when it first gets the tag, and after it finishes diving and activates the phase 2 start code, it breaks the boat, plays a sound, and loads the phase 2 arena structure slightly into water, then loads it again 1 block up, and again to create a little rising out of the water effect. Then runs the Leviathan raise code, but this one is slightly different than the tail one. Not in the animation, but the commands after. We'll instead start the phase 2 behavior code, which works pretty similarly to the first phase 1, but it just alternates between the laser attack and the projectile attack. I already went over the projectile attack, and it starts with the laser attack anyway. It first plays an animation, and then adds 2 tags to the armor stand in the middle. The first one makes the armor stand spin instead of looking at the player, with progressively faster speeds, and the second one makes it constantly fire laser beams slightly below and in front of it. When it gets the tags, it also reorientates the armor stand to the left. Then after every loop the armor stand makes, it gets progressively faster until after 4 ways around, when it removes all the tags and plays a little animation. Then after this attack finishes for the first time, it runs the tail attack again. But when the tail ends in Phase 2, it restarts, which makes the tail be a constant fret in Phase 2. Finally, the death code. First, I should explain that the hitbox of the Leviathan is actually an invisible ghast constantly teleporting to wherever the head is, based on a scoreboard that updates whenever the head moves. The death code activates whenever the Phase 2 Leviathan dies, which will then create a new invisible armor stand wherever it died, then kill the invisible armor stand in the middle, which will stop all animations and whatever attack it were doing. Play a sound, then 5 seconds after, load the death structure, which completely deletes the Leviathan. Then play an explosion particle and summon a bunch of blood entities and a wind charge where the new armor stand is, which makes it look like the head explodes into blood. Then slowly lower the water. Yeah, that's the Leviathan. Pretty much every boss in the game is about as complicated as that. I pretty much explained all that I wanted to in this video. Reminder, the map download is out, and you can find it in the pinned comment and description. If there's anything you want to figure out how to make, you can try and find it in a mess of commands. I don't really know how to end this video. Okay, bye!